Peace, family, and welcome back to A Griot's History, where we connect African American studies to the world you live in so you're ready to shine on that AP exam in May. I'm Dr. Hill, your Griot for today, and we're about to travel from the United States to Jamaica, to Panama, and Brazil to understand how Black people built freedom wherever they landed. Today we're looking at units 2.14 through 2.16, the rise of Black communities, the formation of powerful Maroon societies, and the massive African presence in Brazil. So by the end of this lesson, you'll understand how African people shaped the Americas culturally, politically, and socially, no matter what obstacles they faced. Before we dig in, let's start a little early with our Black popular culture moment. Think about the movie Hidden Figures with Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson. These women faced a system designed to push them out, but they built their own networks of support. They learned together, they protected each other, and they created space for themselves in a world that tried to limit their power. Now imagine that same spirit, but instead of the women working at NASA in the 1960s, picture remote swamps, mountains, forests, and hidden settlements across the Americas. Formerly enslaved Africans worked together and created their own rules. They defended their own settlements, and they preserved their own culture. That's exactly what Maroon communities were. And today, we explore them along the free Black communities and African life in Brazil. Well, let's begin here in the United States. According to our first essential knowledge statement, during the late 1700s and early 1800s, the free Black population grew. By 1860, about 12% of Black people in the United States were free. There were actually more free Black people in the South than in the North. But the enslaved population was still much larger. And even though their numbers were small, free Black communities played a huge role in shaping Black life. According to our second essential knowledge statement, free Black people built institutions in cities like Philadelphia, New York, and New Orleans, places where African Americans created. They created mutual aid societies, churches, schools, publishing networks, and Black-owned businesses. These institutions helped Black people survive and thrive. They preserved culture, built community, and laid the foundation for later freedom movements. So I think it's important for us to center and highlight the voices of Black women. Black women activists use speeches and publications to argue that gender must be a part of anti-slavery debates. They said, quote, "You can't talk about Black freedom without Black women," end quote. One of the greatest voices was a woman by the name of Maria Stewart, the first Black woman to publish a political manifesto and one of the first American women to speak publicly. Her message was direct. Black women deserve education, opportunity, and respect. The statement tells us that these activists connected race, gender, and class, which laid the foundations for movements that will come generations later. We now go to the world of Maroons. We travel to the communities of self-emancipated people who escaped slavery. They formed these communities hidden, and they formed these communities in remote areas across the African diaspora, in mountains and swamps, forests and caves. Some Maroon communities lasted only a few years, while others survived for almost an entire century. Maroon societies included both people who escaped slavery and children born free into the community. They created their own languages, African-based cultural practices, systems of government, and methods of defense, all while fighting disease, hunger, and the risk of attack. African Americans formed Maroon communities in places like the Great Dismal Swamp, alongside indigenous nations, where they found powerful allies. Outside the United States, Maroon communities took on different names: Palenques in Spanish territories and Quilombos in Brazil. The biggest was the Quilombo dos Palmeiras, which lasted nearly 100 years. It had farms and leadership, diplomacy, and a strong military. It was a free African society inside an oppressive slave-holding world. Maroon communities didn't just escape. They fought, they organized. Maroon militias launched wars against colonial governments. Some communities even signed treaties requiring them to stop future revolts, showing how survival sometimes meant to compromise. Two major leaders that we need to discuss. Number one is Baiano, who led Maroons in Panama against Spain for years in the 1500s, and the powerful Queen Nanny, who led Jamaican Maroons in battles against the British. She today is considered a Jamaican national hero. Now we move to Brazil, a country that received more enslaved Africans than anywhere else in the Americas. About half of the Africans who survived the Middle Passage landed in Brazil, roughly 5 million people. They were forced to work in sugar plantations, gold mining, coffee production, cattle ranching, food, and textile production. This massive African presence shaped Brazil forever. With so many African-born people arriving, African culture deeply influenced Brazil life. African tradition survived and transformed Brazil forever. These examples include capoeira, a martial art combining dance, combat, rhythm, and music, and the congada, a festival honoring the King of Congo and the Catholic Lady of Rosary. These practices continue in Brazil today. In the 1800s, Brazil's enslaved population began to decrease. This happened because of what is called manumission, which is the legal release from slavery. This became more common, and it was influenced by Iberian law and by the Catholic Church. By 1888, when Brazil finally abolished slavery, about 4 million Afro-Brazilians were already free, while about 1.5 million remained enslaved. Now let's compare this to the United States. Even after the United States banned the importation of enslaved Africans in 1808, the enslaved population grew, not from importation, but from birth. By the Civil War, about 4 million African Americans were enslaved, making up roughly half of all enslaved people in the Americas. This comparison shows the different systems of slavery across the Americas, one driven by importation, and the other by reproduction. Now let's bring in our required primary sources using your skills of contextualization, change, continuity, causation, and comparison. Our first is the Festival of Our Lady Rosary in the 1770s. Carlos Julio shows how African culture was expressed in Brazilian festivals. Contextualization connects African identity to these Catholic celebrations. And our exploration of Escravamina and Escravavamina, portraits of African-born enslaved people in Brazil. Our comparison and contrasts center African identity under slavery with the autonomy of Maroon communities. Capoeira in Salvador da Bahia shows how capoeira was in action with rhythm, martial arts, and resistance. Our causation skill shows us that capoeira developed because Africans needed ways to defend themselves and preserve their African culture and identity. That wraps up our journey through units 2.14 to 2.16. From free Black communities to Maroons to the massive African presence of Brazil. If this helped you level up for the exam, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. I'm Dr. Kamasi Hill, and this has been a Griot's History. Remember, keep studying, keep creating, and keep the story alive.